Hello there and welcome along to this edition of Games and Goals on RTV News. I'm Adam Reed in London and this is Reuters. Coming up on the programme. Joe Hart's days at Manchester City look numbered. Pep Guardiola explains why the England keeper isn't the number one for him. And the golden penalty from Brazil's golden boy. Neymar sends Rio wild with an Olympic final win over Germany. And Sam Allardyce's first test for England is just around the corner, but will Wayne Rooney be his captain? First though to Manchester City and the future of Joe Hart, who could have played his last game for the club as they look to bring in Claudio Bravo from Barcelona. Hart made his first appearance of the season in goal and captained City in their 1-0 Champions League qualifying playoff win over Steaua Bucharest. He's already found himself out of favour this season under Pep Guardiola, with Bravo already in Manchester this week to complete his $22 million move. Following the win on Wednesday, Guardiola reiterated he's not afraid to make the tough decisions.
I make a lot of mistakes in my decision for my career like a coach. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but I take decisions. So I try to be honest with myself. So I can't deny what I feel. So I was honest with Joe, I was honest with the club. Right now, Joe is a player from Manchester City. And when I believe he can, he has to play, he's going to play. When I believe not, he's not going to play. It's the same for all the other players. So the club is above of us, and the idea we're going to play is above of our situation. So, but I'm so happy that today he could play and play, of course, in his level he has, and that's all.
Well, joining me this week to discuss the goalkeeping changes at Manchester City and the week's other football news is former Arsenal forward Perry Groves and the Daily Mirror sports writer Darren Lewis. Now, Darren, come to you first. How much of Guardiola's reputation is on the line with his treatment of Joe Hart and the potential signing of Claudio Bravo?
I don't think his reputation's on the line at all, Adam. I think he's made a very quick decision. I think he's made a very fair decision in terms of giving Joe Hart the opportunity, as you've just told the viewers, to say goodbye to the fans. For all intents and purposes, last night was a testimonial, really, for him at home as captain. I think as far as Hart is concerned, he's made a very quick decision to allow him to be able to find another club to move on to. So lots of people suggesting his treatment's been disgusting and unfair. I'd say the opposite. I think he's been honest, open, as he's just said himself. And I think as far as he is concerned, he is someone who's won things at other clubs. So you have to back his judgment. He is the manager that City have wanted to bring in for a long, long time. Now that he's in, they have to back him.
Now, Perry, on to Joe Hart, and he didn't have the best European championships at all, but I mean, and he hasn't been Manchester City's goalkeeper at the start of the season. But what's his state of mind going to be? Bear in mind that he's going to have to now look for another club. He wouldn't have expected that.
Well, I think it's a test for him mentally, because it's probably the first time in his career that a manager come in and hasn't rated him. And I personally don't think that Joe Hart has improved as a goalkeeper in the last probably two and a half seasons, because he hasn't been pushed enough. I know the big thing is about Pep doesn't think that he's good enough with the ball at his feet for his distribution, but I think his decision making hasn't been great, and we saw in the Euros that he looked too stiff and too rigid. Now it's the time. I agree with Darren. I don't think he thinks it's a story. A big manager goes in and makes a big decision, and he's very honest with the player. He hasn't pretended that he might have a chance of playing and, he's got a future. So, and I think the reason there's been the uproar is because the Man City fans are emotionally attached to Joe Hart, because he was there at the beginning of their success and all the way through. It wasn't such a big story when Jurgen Klopp went into Liverpool and didn't fancy Christian Benteke. It's just the style of play that he doesn't fit the way he plays. So he needs to go. He needs to refocus. He seems like he's mentally strong, but it will be a test, because it's very difficult. Goalkeepers, it's hard to play your way through a bad patch. Outfield players, you can close people down, you can tackle. So it's the biggest test of his career, I think.
Guys, I look at Joe Hart. Another big reason why it is such an issue is because he's our number one keeper in this country. He is the best English keeper we have. Guardiola has come in and said, you may rate him, but outside of these shores, he's not all that. So it's quite instructive for us and quite a reality check for us as well, who have been speaking and rating Joe Hart so highly. He did very similar with Jack Wilshere, you may recall, when he said, look, you guys, you admire him for Arsenal, you look at the way he plays, We got 2 or 3 of them in the reserves at Barcelona. I think as far as Guardiola is concerned, he is giving English football a bit of a reality check.
Well, maybe it's a saga that might rumble on. Joe Hart's still a Manchester City player at the moment. Gents, we'll leave that there for a second. Elsewhere in the Champions League this week, Celtic also made it through to the group stages for the first time in 3 years. Now, they lost their qualifying playoff second leg 2-0 to Israeli side Hapoel Beersheva, but squeezed through 5-4 on aggregate, much to the relief of boss Brendan Rodgers.
It was probably the longest 90 minutes I've faced as a coach, and I think probably with the past experiences that the players have had, sometimes never know how it can map out in the game. I thought Beersheva were outstanding. They had to come in, they had to force the game. Of course, they had nothing to lose, but they played very well.
Now, the Premier League's early kick-off on Saturday takes place at White Hart Lane as Liverpool play their 4th consecutive away game of the season so far, looking to put last week's defeat to Burnley behind them against Tottenham. Elsewhere, and Chelsea face Burnley at Stamford Bridge, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth meet at Selhurst Park. Everton will look to continue their fine start against Stoke. Meanwhile, champions Leicester aim to secure their first win of the season against Swansea. It's Southampton against Sunderland, with Arsenal away at Watford, with Jose Mourinho's Manchester United travelling to unbeaten Hull. On Sunday, Pep Guardiola's Man City play West Ham at the Etihad. Now, I'll bring the guys in once again. Perry, come to you first. Liverpool, they've conceded 5 goals in 2 league games. I mean, they were a soft touch defensively last season. I mean, is it going to be the same case again?
I don't think we'll know until probably Christmas time, because last year Liverpool were inconsistent and the excuse was Jurgen Klopp was they weren't his players. This season, they are his players. Any team with Alberto Moreno in at left back, trust me, is going to struggle defensively. So then he has to play James Milner at left back, so he's not natural. Centre halves, I think he's going to be okay. With Clavin, Matip can play there, Lovren. But it's the consistency. Liverpool, when a top team, you have one dodgy performance every 9 or 10 games. Liverpool have excellent performances, 5 out of those, and dodgy ones 5 at the moment. So this is a big test for Jurgen Klopp as well. So he needs to get that consistency in the way that his team plays.
As luck would have it, that was the first fixture for Klopp when he took over last season. Got a 0-0 draw there, so did make a clean sheet. But in that time, we know they've been to a couple of cup finals, but has he really brought them on? Has he started to improve players?
It's a really good question, because you would still say that, as Perry was saying, they are inconsistent. They have a good performance in them, but on a consistent basis, which is what you need to get a foothold in the Premier League, they just don't have it as yet. I think you're going to have to look at the next 2-3 months, but a big problem for them is the loss of Loris Karius, the goalkeeper they signed to replace Simon Mignolet. He has a reprieve, but he's terrible. He's uncertain. What happened over the last couple of weeks will do nothing for his confidence at all. I still think they've got big problems, and I think someone like Pochettino will exploit them in the league at the weekend.
Now, Perry, speaking of a side maybe low on confidence, we'll talk about your side, Arsenal. They're faltering again in the transfer market. They can't seem to get anywhere close to signing Mustafi. There's now a week to go, and are Arsenal in a good position? I mean, the international break's coming up. I mean, they need a win against Watford, don't they?
Arsenal normally gets a result when he's under a little bit of pressure, which he is at the moment. He normally gets a big performance. Watford aren't playing particularly well at the moment. No wins under Mazzari, so their confidence is pretty low. And I'm going to say the same thing that everybody's been saying for probably 3 or 4 seasons. They need a centre half and another centre forward. So we're going on like Groundhog Day. The only thing, at least Arsene this week has admitted that he treats it as if he's his own money. So he's treating it like he's got the club's best interest at heart. But if Mustafi has a buyout clause for 38 million quid and Arsenal thinks he's worth 30, Arsenal have the money to go and play the 38 million, because he will make that much of a difference to your team. Sometimes you have to pay over the odds. You can't get value anymore. With the money that's in the Premier League, you can't get a bargain. And Arsenal can't have players that they're going to nurture and they're going to develop. They need players to go in the first team. I'll be amazed if they don't sign at least a centre half.
Well, we'll find out in the next week when the transfer window closes. We'll leave it there, guys, for just a second. But still to come, we discuss what's next for Brazil after Neymar inspired them to a golden win. And we'll see if there's anything British football teams can learn from Team GB's Olympic success. Now, football maybe has never been more important to an Olympic Games than at Rio 2016, as Neymar inspired Brazil to the gold medal. The host nation faced Germany in the final in the Maracanã 2 years after that disastrous 7-1 World Cup semi-final defeat. Now, Neymar scored the game's opening goal thanks to a stunning curling free kick, but the Germans levelled in the second half thanks to Max Meyer's strike forcing extra time. Now, with no further goals after 120 minutes, the game went to penalties. After 8 successful kicks, Germany's Niels Petersen's penalty was saved. That left Neymar to hold his nerve and score the winning penalty to secure the gold for Brazil. Well, after the final whistle, there were scenes of utter jubilation. There they are, in the streets of Rio, as Brazil won 7 goals during the games, but football had a special place for this country, and it was the one they really did want. Well, Neymar will get to enjoy that gold-winning feeling for a little longer. He won't be returning to Barcelona until after Brazil's World Cup qualifiers against Ecuador and Colombia next month. The new incoming coach Tite now wants them to only look to the future, though, to breathe new life into the national side.
Traz alguma contribuição, e esse é o meu papel.
Look at what is going on today. Look at the here and now. My role is to bring a contribution and to do it now. Sitting and thinking about my imaginary team from the 1970s, that will only bring negative results.
E já está na hora de dar passo, de lembrar sim, mas dar passo à frente em relação a isso.
We have to remember that, but move forward and construct a better game within our powers.
Das nossas autonomias, cada dentro da nossa autonomia. Eu estou tentando fazer isso.
Now, Darren, it was a gold medal for Brazil in the men's football. A big sigh of relief from the whole country. Were they kind of in a no-win situation, given how much they put pressure on their football teams to win this gold medal?
Yes, I think they were. I mean, they needed to have a feel-good factor about the tournament, and Neymar provided it for them. But, you know, as Tite was just saying there, that the great sides from Brazil cast a huge shadow over this current squad. The young players, there are concerns that the good players aren't coming through on a consistent enough basis, and that's a problem they have. They had to parachute Neymar in to help a decent but not vintage crop to win the tournament, and the big problem for Brazil is everyone is well aware of that. I don't look at that success and think to myself, Brazil are back. Quite the opposite.
Well, putting what Tite mentioned there, saying only looking to the future, putting this behind them, because it is a kind of starting again process for Brazil, because they're struggling in Copa America qualifying. They had World Cup qualifying. They had a poor Copa America, but this needs to be the catalyst, even if they do anything in the next World Cup, isn't it?
It should be, but I think what's happened is that the fear factor of playing in Brazil has gone completely, and yeah. Darren was talking about the development of the younger players. What happens is their domestic league isn't particularly strong. If you're half decent at 17, 18, you get whipped away to a club in Europe. Then you don't play, and then you go on, you're sent out on loan. And their big problem is they're not producing world-class or even international class defenders. So you know full well that you can get at the Brazilian team. So as Darren, they're going to be heroes or zeros. Even if they got beat in the final, then that group of players probably could have never gone back to Brazil again. So they're still smarting as well. I think the aftershock of the 7-1 defeat to Germany in the World Cup, I think that really sort of hit home quite hard.
Well, leave that there just for a second, guys. And further up the medal table in Rio was Team GB, who became the first country to actually improve on their medal haul after hosting an Olympics. Their tally of 67 was a record number for an away games, and if they weren't aware of the impact their achievements were having back home, then they certainly found out when they returned this week. A home for heroes. Team GB's history-making athletes touched down at Heathrow after a triumphant return from Brazil. Double Olympic champions Max Whitlock and Nicola Adams led the team off the plane, but that was only the start of the welcome. Their golden-nosed plane adding to the 27 gold, 23 silvers and 17 bronze medals the team amassed in Rio. Inside the terminal, hundreds of family and fans had gathered to greet the athletes, who were overwhelmed by the reception.
I'm blown away, man. I'm lost for words, but I'm humbled by the people that have come out here and everything, and the party starts now, man, because I'm not from Brazil, I'm from here, so everyone's here.
Oh, it's just unbelievable. I mean, we're so overwhelmed about what's going on right now. Everyone in Great Britain has just gone 100% full support for hockey.
It was the most successful away games for a British team ever, with the scale of the individual achievements still sinking in for some.
It's pretty remarkable to have all this support, and hopefully we're sending a clear message to the rest of the people here and back home. Is we've hopefully done you proud, and it's a huge honour to represent this country.
Much of their success has been put down to the preparation and attention to detail given to athletes who were keen to praise the funding that supports them.
All I know is that we are the best prepared. I think we don't ever want for anything. If we do need anything, it's always been provided for us. And the best prepared athletes have the best opportunity to go out and do well, better than their competitors.
Some have had to go for months without seeing family, but that wasn't the case for the Brownlee brothers, who were so close they finished the triathlon first and second on the podium.
Obviously, I'd want to get a gold medal and become Olympic champion, but I was beaten by the better person. And the next best step is silver, and to get gold and silver in Olympic Games is very, very special.
You love the sport and you love training hard and you love competing, and so that's what you do it for. But that said, I'm very proud of, I think, where I've taken triathlon from, not me personally, but where it's gone, and I've been part of that.
So Team GB's athletes have left the competition behind in Rio and returned home here to Britain. But the carnival atmosphere they experienced in Brazil doesn't look like ending anytime soon. Armed with a record number of medals in these packed bags, their achievements look like being celebrated for a good while to come. Many will now head for well-deserved breaks away from their sport, while for others it's straight back to competition. And as the road to Rio comes to an end, so begins the trek to Tokyo in 4 years' time. Now, Perry, we saw the great success that Team GB's athletes there. Is there anything that British football sides can learn from their success?
I think they're two different ends of the spectrum, because we've been so successful, and most of these sports, they work to peak in 4 years' time. So even if you look at the track cyclists, their results haven't been great for a period of 2.5, maybe 3 years. And then their physical program, their psychological program is all for that fourth year. Whereas footballers, they have to peak every weekend or every midweek. So on that side of it, I don't think so. Maybe on the mental strength a little bit, but I just think that they're two different situations that you're finding. So it's difficult to compare the football side to the Olympic athlete side.
Now, Darren, I know you may have something to say about this. A football at the Olympics, Brazil proved how important it is to them. There was a Team GB side at London 2012. The home nations, apart from England, don't seem to like the idea of bringing one to Tokyo 2020. But is there a case that they're missing a trick?
No, I don't think so. I think we've just begun one of the most eagerly awaited seasons probably we've ever had in the Premier League. The product is just fantastic. Richard Scudamore, the chief executive, will be delighted with the season ahead, and I think as far as clubs are concerned, they don't want them going off to the Olympics and disrupting their campaign. A lot of good players have been out in Rio who won't be available to clubs in the Premier League for the first 2-3 weeks of the season. You spoke earlier in the show about Neymar. Barcelona won't have him for a few weeks. Clubs don't like the whole idea of letting their best young players go across there. I've got to just say as well, I agree with Perry in terms of the pressure is on these guys every 4 years. The pressure is on footballers every week. We will judge them every week. You'll get us here in the studio judging them every week. It drives me up the wall when I hear people say, what can football learn from the Olympics? It was great. We had a great time. We celebrated their success. Leave that there and let's appreciate what we have with football.
It's definitely a fun debate to keep having, though, isn't it? Every 4 years.
Do you know what? The Premier League clubs aren't be less powerful in 4 years' time.
I think they might be right. They might be all right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll leave that there for just a second, guys. Time for a break here, but plenty still to come on Games and Goals. As former FIFA President Sepp Blatter begins his hearing for a 6-year ban from football-related activities. Welcome back. Now, former FIFA President Sepp Blatter attended the Court of Arbitration for Sport this week as a hearing for his 6-year ban got underway. Blatter is accused of breaking FIFA Code of Ethics rules over conflicts of interest in relation to a payment of nearly $1.8 million that the Swiss made to the then former UEFA President Michel Platini for unofficial work in 2011. Blatter has denied any wrongdoing and remains optimistic.
I'm sure that the panel will understand that the payment made to Platini was really a debt that we had against him, and this is a principle: if you have debts, you pay them.
Now moving on to international football, and Sam Allardyce will name his first England squad since becoming manager this Sunday. Despite uncertainty over his club future, Joe Hart knows he will be included in the squad. There's also been a suggestion that John Terry will be asked to come out of international retirement, but the England boss wasn't giving much more away.
Key element now is to picking the squad. We've finished with all our backroom staff nearly, maybe one more. I'm not quite that sure yet, but obviously with the finalising of the people who are working close to me with Craig Shakespeare's, I've been delighted that he's coming on board from Leicester. Martin Margeston joined us a couple of weeks ago, and obviously Sammy. So it was all working together, hopefully for the good of the team, and hopefully get the team winning from the 4th of September, which is Slovakia away.
Now, Perry, as we know, Joe Hart will be in the squad, but what's the case for him playing though? Bear in mind you've got Fraser Forster, Jack Butland coming back, and even Tom Heaton doing well.
At the moment, I don't think there is a case for Joe Hart to be playing in the squad. Fine. If Fraser Forster's playing well for Southampton, he deserves his chance, because Joe Hart, we mentioned before, was very, very poor in the Euros. And again, it's difficult for goalkeepers to just be training and then go. But I know that he's played in the Champions League against Crest, but me and Daz could have played in goal. We could have sat in a deck chair. So he's not actually 100% mentally focused. He needs to get back into the grind of the Premier League, or even if he goes abroad, then you can see if he can prove again that he's England's #1 goalkeeper. You can't have someone who's Man City's #3 goalkeeper then playing international football. So and why put him under that much pressure? Because if England play their first game and he makes a mistake, Joe Hart's going to get hammered, and so is Sam Allardyce. So he has to make a big decision.
Big calls to be made, Darren. I mean, England had the youngest squad at Euro 2016. Sam Allardyce would like to make some sort of statement, put his stamp on it. Do you expect to see many changes?
I do. And I do think he would have explored the Terry thing. My understanding is that it's not going to happen now. And I'd be surprised if he were to bite that particular bullet, because the John Terry issue isn't just about the football. It's about being a representative of a multicultural nation. We all know the nature of the allegations against him and the charge that he was found guilty of by the FA. We know that he was found, no case to answer in a court of law, but football rules were seen to be broken. It's a can of worms as far as Terry is concerned. Does Sam Allardyce really want to open it? That said, there are players like Jermaine Defoe, 33 years old, still scoring, kept Sunderland up last season, and there are other players who a lot of people feel should have been in the squad for the Euros. So I think there will be a few changes.
So Perry, how important is it to move forward then, rather than even look back at John Terry?
Exactly. John Terry is a step back, probably 18 months, and he's not going to be able to play in the World Cup. The next World Cup is coming up. So Sam Allardyce has to find, and that's why he's the England manager. He has to find an answer, and whether that's John Stones playing alongside, but playing alongside Chris Smalling, or whether he's playing like Jagielka or Cahill. But one thing I can guarantee you is that under Sam Allardyce, England will have a philosophy and a structure, and you won't see 11 players have nervous breakdowns like we did against Iceland. It won't happen, because they'll have a default position where they know their jobs. Under Roy Hodgson, he didn't know his own job. Gary Neville didn't know his job. The players didn't know their jobs. So you're not going to get that situation. It ain't going to be pretty football, but at the minute, that doesn't really matter. It's about winning games.
I can see why he wants to call John Terry back. There isn't any leadership. You talked about the Iceland game. You looked around the pitch. No one really was able to kind of say, look, lads, let's put our foot on the ball and calm down a bit here. I think as far as Terry is concerned, you look at Ricardo Carvalho playing for Portugal at 37 years old. Terry's only 35. And he would... People say you wouldn't play at the next World Cup, but if you're Sam Allardyce, you just want to get there. You just want to get together a side for each qualifier, and if Terry is the guy who's going to give the side stability through this transitional phase alongside John Stones, bring him on, give him the leadership, give him the experience, just like Terry had alongside Frank Leboeuf and Marcel Desailly, then maybe it would be a good thing to get him in there on a football basis. But on the basis of all the issues that surround John Terry, I think it would be divisive, I think it would be dangerous, and I think it would split football completely.
It's going to be very, very interesting team. We'll reflect on that squad announcement next week. Gents, we'll leave that there just for a second, and there's just time to bring you some of the other sports stories making headlines this week. The Olympic flag has arrived in Tokyo as part of the handover to the 2020 Games. Tokyo's governor, Yuriko Kaoki, has called for everyone involved to work together to host a successful Games. The build-up so far has been hit by stadium planning issues, plagiarism and corruption allegations. Now, Russia will not compete at next month's Paralympic Games after the Court of Arbitration for Sport upheld a ban imposed for state-sponsored doping. It means that unlike the Olympic Games, no Russian Paralympics will compete in Rio. Elsewhere, and after exaggerating a story about being robbed at gunpoint in the Brazilian capital last week, USA swimmer Ryan Lochte is now finding himself out of favour with sponsors. Swimwear giant Speedo has cut their ties with the Olympic star, saying that they'd now donate $50,000 of Lochte's fee to a children's charity. And Andy Murray may have won Olympic gold, but he was stopped in the final of the Western and Southern Open in Cincinnati by Marin Cilic. It ended a remarkable unbeaten run of 22 straight wins, a career best for the world number 2. Cilic won the final in straight sets 6-4, 7-5. Well, that's just about it for this week's show, but please do join us next time. As the transfer window comes to a close, will Arsene Wenger bolster his Arsenal squad? Well, that's just about it for this edition of Games and Goals. My thanks to Perry and Darren for their contributions. I'm Adam Reed, and until next time, here from the Reuters studio in London, goodbye for now.